Hello. At the start I want to say that written version of the guide will be posted in the video description, like always. However, it won't be as detailed as the video one because of limited space. If you struggle to replicate the build just from written guide, please watch the video. I'll explain the build in more details. Today I will show you my new build for Pyromancer that you can use in Titan Hunt. The 1.5D patch nerfed my old build quite hard, so I had to come up with something different. Pyromancer has access to quite few stack skills in its kit, both from character skills and generic ones. Unfortunately, we don't have many support skills available. That's why I ended up using Chaos Eruption to be able to use pretty much only good skill chain combo available to us, which is from the fire. This build focuses on late game damage, so I recommend using it in the base Titan Hunt level, maybe Sigil +1. Anything above that makes enemies unnecessarily tanky without giving us anything extra as a reward, because higher sigils don't increase amount of materials gained. Naturally, we run last Sigil to have access to Void King and its powers and get all possible types of materials, including Void Essences. We pick third weapon, which not only gives us easy access to Disarray, which is a big damage multiplier, and later leads to Disoriented, which is another damage multiplier. More importantly, it also gives us access to our main skill, which is Chaos Eruption. When it comes to runes, since I mostly make those builds as material farmers, I reserve 2 spots for material runes, Material Harvest and Efficient Extraction. Material Harvest being better for regular materials and Efficient Extraction being better for Void Essences, aka both parts. If you care about prestige levels, you can take Arduous Training over one of the material runes. Third minor rune we take is Endless Refill, which provides us with extra rerolls and locks every cycle. Extra rerolls and locks every cycle. If you don't care about materials or prestige level and you are running normal run, you can take reroll mastery to have even more rerolls, and weapon expert as a third option to start with Chaos Eruption from level 1 instead needing to wait until you find it. With major runes, there isn't much flexibility available to us. The 3 runes I used are the best option you can take. Those 3 runes being Singular Focus, Divine Legacy and Adaptive Empowerment. Singular Focus is required to take Firebolt, one of our skill, 4 times, which we use as our skill chains triggers. This rune is pretty much mandatory, the build won't work without it. Divine Legacy allows us to force spawn both skill chains and damage to physical passives every 30 levels. This rune definitely makes the build way stronger, but I guess it could work without it if your goal isn't to reach as far as possible. And for the last rune we take is Adaptive Empowerment. Since we use 4 fire skills in the build, this rune gives us 60% more damage to our main skill, so way more than any other rune can give us. It's not mandatory, but since it's unlocked from the Pyromancer passives, Pyromancer passive 3, you most likely have it. Since we banish pretty much every legendary passive that we won't be taking, leaving only 3 we want. Keeping rerolls for Divine Legacy procs is not needed, we won't be rerolling legendary options at all. But these ones we banish all useless options and we get all the skills. So for the skills, like already mentioned, we utilize Singular Focus rune to be able to pick same skill multiple times. Since we don't have access to poison, early on we need to take Chromatic Bolt or Chromatic Slash for that. Once we take poison on hit once, we replace it to proper skill. Best to do it before level 30 to not have 10 extra useless legendary passives available. This step is not mandatory, it is solely for 200 extra crit chance from Dazed, so if you would rather make your run simpler and leave like 1-2 titans earlier, you can skip it. And for the main skills we take Firebolt 4 times in total, which is pretty much only low cooldown skill available to us that we use as our skill chain support. In addition, it also provides weakness, but it's useless for this build. Next skill we take is Magic Missile, which will be our main burn stack generator. It hits 20 times in total, so combined with the skill chains we can get a lot of hits from the skill alone, making use of burn on hit or crit passives to apply a lot of burn stacks. In addition, it also provides Fragility, which is another great damage multiplier for our build that otherwise we would need to spend Titan passive on. Titan passive point on. Our last skill is Chaos Eruption, which is our main damage dealer. It is stack skill, which means it gets extra damage for each stack on a target, in this case burn stack. This is one of the reasons why we want to have burn stack generator in our build. This skill will hit 3 times in total, but we cannot increase its range, in only the thickness of each projectile. It has three waves, projectiles, missiles, whatever. So we will need to sit at mid-range, and if we get too far away from the bosses, for example when trying to avoid their attacks, our DPS might drop drastically, so keep that in mind. Since we also use Divine Legacy Rune, early on the strategy is to take only fire skills, using rerolls if there are none available, and take any arcane skill. We don't need to take chaos skill because we start with one. Before level 30 we want to have 4 fire skills, 1 arcane skill and 1 chaos skill, so we have access to both skill chains we rely on. Of course, if you already picked a random arcane skill and then you find Magic Missile, take it, even if it means having 2 arcane skills for some time. Also, as mentioned earlier, we want to take one of chromatic skills as soon as possible to unlock poison, and preferably get rid of it before level 30. When it comes to skill passives, it's quite simple. Our main damage dealer is Chaos Eruption, so damage passives to it are very good. Attack speed passives can be decent, however, since we will be triggering this skill several times a second from skill chains, it won't make that big of a difference. However, Chaos Eruption also has a chaotic trait, which is kinda like upgraded version of chains. It will proc chaotic, and which is kinda like upgraded version of skill chains, as skill triggered by it can multicast, as opposed to normal skill chains. Each time we cast it naturally, not from skill chains, it will proc chaotic, and we have 1 in 5 chance that it will proc Magic Missile, our burn stack generator. That's why attack speed for it isn't completely useless, and multicast is banished. When it comes to firebolts, only thing we want from them is to lower their cooldown. That's why we want to take attack speed to firebolt every time we see it. Damage for it is completely useless and multicast is banished. And for our last skill, Magic Missile, passives on it don't matter that much. Damage for it is completely useless, as its only role is to generate burn stacks. Attack speed for it will barely make a difference because we trigger it so many times with skill chains, and multicast is banished. Obviously there are also so-called group passives, they follow the same rule. If it's something that will boost DPS of Chaos Eruption, we take it. Passives that will work for it are from Frontal, Burst and Missile tags, also non-fire ones. Group passives for fire skills can be ignored. For general offensive stats, passives, naturally our top priority is cast frequency to lower cooldown of Firebolt to lowest possible. You won't be able to reach 0.15 second cooldown on them, so there won't be a point at which it stops being our priority. After that, the order of other stats doesn't really matter that much, because we get so much of each of them from other sources, but here is the order I was following. Our next priority is critical chance, then critical damage, regular damage, and area of effect at the end. Multicast is banished because skills triggered by skill chains can't multicast, and it also removes one passives from our legendary passives pool. For defensive stats, we take movement speed until we feel fast enough. However, since we also will be taking Leviathan from time to time, remember to offset it by taking more movement speed. When it comes to HP, it depends on your gameplay. Personally, I almost never get hit, and if I do, it's deeper in, where I would get one shot even with a lot of HP, so I only take it when there is nothing better available. If you prefer to have more HP, feel free to take it more often. Armor and block are completely ignored, because later on enemies penetrate 90% of our defense. Since Magnet and the XP passives don't work on the XP we got in the past, the earlier we take them, the stronger they are, which means we want to prioritize them early on, and once we reach around 100 extra XP, we start to take them only when there is nothing better available. Like I already mentioned earlier, skill chains are one of most important thing in the build, and in this build, and that's also why we use Divine Legacy Rune to force spawn legendary skill chains every 30 levels. We take two types of them, Fire to Chaos and Fire to Arcane. Because we also don't add that many different passives to the pool, we have decent chance to find them not naturally without Divine Legacy, so it's not uncommon to end up with like 4 to 500% chance on both. When it comes to negative effects, this build doesn't focus on them that much. Obviously, our top priority is burn, so we want to take burn on hit and crit as many times as possible, because each level makes us apply more stacks at once. We don't care about burn damage though, only amount of burn stacks. Other than that, we will have access to disarray, for which we take disarray on hit once. Doesn't matter whether it's white or green tier, 1 point will be enough to reach hard cap of 200 stacks. Disarray gives us quite big bonus to damage, and we also use it to get access to disarray to disoriented synergy, which is another big damage multiplier. Taking chromatic skill early on also gives us access to poison on hit, which again we take once, doesn't matter whether it's white or green tier. Only reason why we want poison is to take poison to daze synergy later on, which will gives us 200 extra crit chance. Pyromancer Ascension isn't anything crazy, however we can trigger it quite fast, so I decided to not disable it this time. It will provide some extra hits that can apply burn, but also speed up early cycles a little bit. That's why we take white tier passives for it, which makes charging Ascension faster. Ignore green and blue tier passives for it, we don't care about its damage. For the synergies outside of the ones that come from the Titans, we won't be using any of them in this build. Synergies you will be able to find are Burn to Slow and Desire to Bleed, however we ignore both of them. Already briefly mentioned that we banish pretty much every useless legendary option to always have Divine Legacy offer us what we want, we don't need to spend rerolls. Unfortunately, Firebolt has both physical and magical attack, adding more useless passives. Here is full list of what we banish. Multicast to Firebolt, multicast to Chaos Eruption, multicast to Magic Missile, multicast to non-fire skills, multicast to physical skills, area of effect to physical skills, multicast to magical skills, area of effect to magical skills, and damage to magical skills. This will leave only 3 legendary passives available: Fire to Arcane, Skill Chain, Fire to Chaos, Skill Chain, and damage to physical skills, which we will want to take every 30 levels. So now that we know how the build works, what to take, what to not take, and so on, time for another very important aspect, which are Titans and their passives. Order of them is quite important, and passives we take from them is even more important, so I recommend leaving at least 5 to 10 rerolls for each Titan to make sure we get the passive we are looking for, and we can roll for specific Titan as our next cycle. The first Titan we go to is Mizahet, aka the Scorpion, and we take Exposed on a hit power. This is pretty much the biggest damage bonus we can get from Titans, so it's nice to get it early. Exposed will increase damage of big hits by 4% for each stacks. So hard cap of 200 stacks provide us with 1200% more damage. Second Titan is Arwanak, the spider from which we take Disarray to Disoriented synergy. Disarray gives 1% extra crit damage per stack, so that's 3 times more crit damage for us. Third Titan we go for is Broken, aka the Lizard, from which we take Shattered on hit power. Shattered reduce armor of enemies by fixed amount. For Titan Hunt, 200 stack is hard cap, so minus 200 armor on enemies. This means the more armor enemies gets from each cycle, the weaker it gets, the weaker the Shattered gets. However, later on we use it for another Titan power, so it's always useful. Fourth Titan we go for is Arwanak the Spider once again, from which we take another synergy, this time Poison to Dazed. This will give us 200% extra crit chance, which later on is nothing crazy, but still worth 1 point. After beating 4th Titan, we go to the Void King realm. From Void Hunter, the mini-boss before King, we take 120% cast frequency passive, as it will reduce cooldown of our firebolts significantly. And from the Void King himself, we take chance to apply Wound power. Wound is unique negative effect, which gives us 50% chance to apply double stacks of any other negative effects on the target, including burn stacks, which are main focus on our build, resulting in 50% more DPS on average. After beating the King, our next Titan on the list is Phaidum, the Ogre, from which we take chance to gain Finesse every time we multicast. Skills triggered by skill chains won't multicast, but it still will work on natural casts and skills triggered by chaotic. 7th Titan on the list is Midorak the Beetle, from which we want to take a chance to gain aptitude each time we crit. With the amount of hits this build has in late game, we can reach 800 or more stacks of aptitude, meaning 1600 or more extra crit damage, giving us huge boost to overall DPS, because each aptitude stack gives 2% more crit damage, extra crit damage, or other crit damage. 8th Titan we will be fighting are Vivolt and Volkach, the Kobold twins, from which we want to take Shattered to prowess synergy. This is the reason why Shattered is still useful even later in the game. Similar to aptitude, later on we are able to reach more than 800 stacks of prowess, giving us 800% extra damage or other damage. So keep in mind that stats from buffs like prowess and aptitude are added to our stats, while stats from the negative effects are multipliers. So at this point we got all key elements of the build, so next Titans will be so-called filler powers to give us as much extra DPS as we can squeeze from each passives. Since we still want to get extra cast frequency, we will be visiting Midorak the Beetle for its extra cast frequency and crit damage passive. Obviously we cannot spam same Titan over and over, we also need to find other Titan so we can weave them both. Other Titan we will be running is Mezahead the Scorpion, as it has power that allows us to gain form every time we cast a skill, giving us a lot of extra crit chance, which at this point we still don't have that much. So the 9th Titan will be Mezahead the Scorpion, from which we take chance to gain form every time we cast a skill. 10th Titan will be Midorak, from which we take cast frequency and crit damage passive. 11th Titan will be Mezahead again, from which we take chance to gain form every time we cast a skill. 12th Titan will be Midorak again, from which we take cast frequency and crit damage passive. 13th Titan will be Mezahead again, from which we take chance to gain form every time we cast a skill. 14th Titan will be Midorak again, from which we take cast frequency and crit damage passive. 15th Titan will be Mezahead for the last time, from which we take chance to gain form every time we cast the skill. And 16th Titan will be Midorak again, from which we take cast frequency and crit damage passive. At this point we are able to generate 700 to 800 form stacks, so going for the Scorpion again wouldn't be efficient, as buffs start to hit soft cap at 800. This means we need to look for another Filler Titan that will replace the Mezahead. Another thing our build has that we didn't focus on yet is Chaotic. That's why our next Filler Titan will be Felipox, the Mushroom, from which we'll be taking increased chance to trigger Chaotic. So the 17th Titan will be Felipox, from which we take increased chance to trigger Chaotic. 18th Titan will be Midorak again, from which we take cast frequency and crit damage passive. 19th Titan will be Felipox again, from which we take increased chance to trigger Chaotic. And for the last 20th Titan we pick Spider, as it's easiest to kill. We don't care what passive it offers, we are leaving after beating it, as at this point Titan starts to take too long to kill for them to be worth farming for over 1 minute per Titan. Okay, so that's all information related to the build. Hopefully I explained it well enough that you are able to follow it. If you don't understand something about the build or have trouble with specific part of it, let me know in the comments. It's totally possible that I forgot about something, thinking that's obvious, not realizing that for new player it in fact might not be that obvious. I try to talk about everything in my guides, but there is a lot of things in those builds. You can also watch the full run of the build in the video I posted yesterday. I'll put a link to it in the video description as well. I hope that this build will help you with farming, or maybe you'll learn something that will help you in creating your own builds. Thank you for watching, I see you in the next one. Have a good day, bye bye.